Hi and welcome. In this podcast, I would be talking about the research report published by India Ratings and Research on India's external trade performance in first quarter of financial year 23. India's merchandise exports reached $121.2 billion in first quarter of financial year 23 from $95.5 billion in the same quarter of previous fiscal despite the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The YY growth moderated to a 5-quarter low of 26.8% due to the high base effect. The growth slowdown and high inflation in advanced economies, coupled with disruptions in the global supply chain, have begun to impact India's merchandise exports as it grew at a tepid 1.9% year on year in July to August 2022. Merchandise imports, meanwhile, accelerated by 49.8% year on year to a record high of $190.2 billion on the back of high commodity prices in first quarter of financial year 23. Prices of energy and non-energy increased by 85.6% and 18.3% year on year respectively in the same period. Within non-energy, the prices of items such as fertilizers, base metals and oils and meals rose by 113.6%, 12.3% and 27.2% year on year respectively in first quarter of financial year 23. Overall, Indra expects the current account deficit to have widened to $28.4 billion, that is 3.4% of GDP, in first quarter of financial year 23, as against a deficit of $13.4 billion, that is 1.5% of GDP, in fourth quarter of financial year 22. As a share of GDP, it is expected to jump to a 36-quarter high, and in level terms, it would be at a 38-quarter high in the same period. Although the merchandise exports touched a record high of $121.2 billion in first quarter of financial year 23, Indra believes that they are likely to slow down in second quarter of fiscal year 23 and come in at $104 billion, growing by a meager 1.4% year on year in the same period due to the global headwinds. The IMF, in its July update on the World Economic Outlook, trimmed its forecast for global GDP growth to 3.2% in 2022 from 3.6% earlier in April 2022. Also, the GDP forecast for some of India's key exporting destinations such as the US, Eurozone and China have been revised downwards. This may put India's exports targets of $750 billion for goods and services for fiscal year 23 in jeopardy. On the other hand, Indra expects the merchandise imports to remain robust due to elevated global commodity prices and weak rupee. The agency expects the Indian rupee to average 79.6 rupees against the US dollar in second quarter of fiscal year 23. Furthermore, the merchandise imports, which grew 40.5% year on year during July to August 2022 to $128.2 billion, is expected to come in at $192.2 billion in second quarter of fiscal year 23, increasing by 30.3% year on year. All in all, Indra expects the merchandise trade deficit to come in at a fresh high of around $87 billion in second quarter of fiscal year 23. In case you require further insights on the points discussed in the podcast, you can check out our research report. You can also reach out to us in case of any clarifications, comments, or observations.